Drummer, what do you got? Drummer! Oh, that sucks. Oh, wow, that was so... Oh, that fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, and with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing on this late evening?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm actually fairly awake. I was falling asleep on the couch earlier, but I seem to have recovered from that.
That must mean that you are really amped and ready to dive into this episode. It's Willie Adler of Lamb of God. Not gonna bullshit you. There's not a whole lot of Lamb of God shit we're talking about, so if you are expecting a really nice, long, informative Lamb of God conversation, yeah, it's not gonna happen here. This is solely about the band's beer, the Ghost Walker beer, non-alcoholic beer that the band released. And contrary to some other people in the rock and metal industry who won't come on this show because of us apparently talking about alcohol, this is one of the few times where it actually worked in our favor.
Well, we'll get there, you know.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, this is Willie Adler of Lamb of God. Dan has not had the Ghost Walker IPA non-alcoholic beer.
Well, it hasn't shown up on my doorstep yet, which apparently it's supposed to.
Yes. Yep. Whenever that happens, it'll show up, and Dan can have a whole 6-pack. I only had one, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to be nice and give Dan a whole 6-pack of this. And then I found out, you know, they had really awesome Ghost Walker glasses made that had like the etching in them and stuff like that. And there's like a whole combo pack where I think you can get the beer and a hat and a poster and some other stuff. But, you know, it's kind of interesting. You know, a lot of times, like, we obviously talk about beer. I'm currently drinking one right now. It's one of those things where the idea of a heavy metal band putting out a non-alcoholic beer, I remember seeing the press release for it, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. What were your initial thoughts on this idea?
Initial thoughts or mature thoughts?
I mean, initial thoughts, and I guess you'll be able to speak more about your mature thoughts once you actually get to try the beer.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm not, like, stoked about checking out a non-alcoholic beer, but it's free, so there's that.
It'll taste better that way.
I mean, from what you guys are telling me, it sounds like it's very, very full. It has a very full flavor. It tastes just like a regular beer. So, I mean, maybe... like I said, I'll just have to try it. It could change my life. I could be ordering it by the gallon, you know, like, who knows, once I get it. And because, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it's not about the alcohol content. It's about the flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if the flavor's good, I'm going to drink that drink. It doesn't matter whether it's an alcoholic drink or not.
Yeah, the thing that was kind of interesting about this is I fully went into it expecting not really to like it. I mean, one of the few NA beers I've ever had, obviously, is like everyone's, is O'Doul's. And it's almost like Heineken to me. It tastes like a shitty Heineken, which, I mean, Heineken is a shitty beer. But it was one of those things where, you know, I don't know. It's the first time I've really ever seen or even thought of, I guess, a non-alcoholic beer being some kind of other flavor other than just a traditional style like lager, like an American lager or whatever. And the fact that they chose to do a pretty interesting IPA for a non-alcoholic beer was pretty intriguing to me. So when I thankfully had a friend who happened to have some, and I hit him up, I was like, yo, I'll do a beer trade with you and give me one. To try it, I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. My expectations were pretty low, because I didn't want to be like, oh, I expect it's going to be the best thing I've ever had, and it'll put like Founder's beer and a lot of other crap beers to shame. And, you know, I obviously did not think it was going to be that good. because like a great example, honestly, is, I tried that Metallica beer, and that beer was fucking shit. And what is the comment I made on that? Don't trust people who don't drink anymore to make an alcoholic beverage. Lamb of God that's kind of what I expected with this Lamb of God beer, to be completely honest. And I can honestly say, at least for me, I think Randy and them should make more beers that are non-alcoholic. If it's this good and the product can be this good, then this is what I think it works for them, given the fact that most of the band now is all sober.
Yeah, and I liked your idea too about, like, let's get some coffee, some coffee stouts in there or something, because there's nothing that sober dudes love more than coffee.
Oh, absolutely.
And this would be really great. I actually have a question for you, John, that that's something I was kind of thinking during listening to the interview. Do you ever think that non-alcoholic beer, because you talked a lot about like non-alcoholic beer helping out people, that obviously are trying to get sober and they want, maybe the taste and that sort of thing. Do you ever think it was a concern for people that maybe are sober that might get them back into beer? Kind of the inverse of it?
I kind of did, and that was sort of also where I was trying to go, but instead my mind latched onto this weird idea of, what if it gets the opposite effect of, what if it gets people who have never drank into it because they like the band and it's a non-alcoholic beer? So,
yeah,
I know that the probability of that is very slim and none, but the idea of that seemed interesting. But there is still that kind of thing of, like, you see someone doing it and they're enjoying it so much that you're just kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe. I like the band, and I like what this dude does, and, they've not steered me wrong in other things. Like, I'm kind of thinking more from Randy's perspective, because, a lot of people take what Randy has to say to heart, and the fact that, in the video for this beer, he's going like, oh, like the first time I tried one of their NA beers, I shoved it away, and I was like, no, non-alcoholic, I've been sober. And
right.
In seeing that's kind of what made me start thinking, sort of along the lines of what you're saying of, like, could it possibly get people that are sober into drinking beer or whatever? But the thing I kind of keep coming back to as a whole is just, I know a lot of people who are sober, and, they always say, I think Jost is a great example. It's like, or one was too many and 1,000 was never enough. And,
right, sure, I get that.
And, and he constantly says, like, it just didn't work for me. I can't drink. We've had Nick Maruso from It Dies Today, who's a, recovering alcoholic, and he talked about his whole, issues with sobriety on this podcast a long time ago. And, like, when I talked about something, he goes, people like you who can just casually drink, like, have a drink and then you're done for the day. Like, I don't understand how you can do that. And I think that's kind of the thing maybe that's cool about this, and creating different kinds of NA flavors and shit and beers is the ability to, if you still love the camaraderie of maybe going to a bar and wanting to hang out with your friends, I don't know, I just feel like eventually, like, you would get tired of potentially not having a drink and sharing that kind of experience of, chatting with your friends somewhere over a couple of beers or whatever. And like I said, I'd be really interested to see how this would be on draft, because I'm sure it would kind of get rid of some of that canned flavor that this has.
Yeah, possibly. I think obviously draft is the preferred, the preferred method of drinking any beer. And I think, again, without having tasted it myself yet, I don't know if you guys are just full of crap, or if, if this is going to be something that I'm really going to be interested in, to be honest. And I'm curious, obviously. It's cool having the Lamb of God branding on it, that sort of thing. So, like, even if I don't like it, I'll probably still keep the cans, just for display purposes.
Well, this interview isn't that long. We've already talked almost as long as the interview. Apologies. I know some of you hate when that happens. But without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Willie, and we'll talk to you guys afterwards, and I'll tell a fun story. So I have the pleasure of talking with Willie Adler, guitarist for Lamb of God, who just released their Ghostwalker IPA non-alcoholic beer in collaboration with Brew Dog. How are you doing today, Willie?
I'm doing really well, man. The weather's beautiful, and I wish, I've already blown through my initial supply of my Ghost Walker. So I'm kind of bummed. I'd really love to sit outside and have one right now.
Well, I'll tell you what. I just opened the can that I got, and I'm going to try it for the first time with you on the line. So,
oh, dude, you're going to love it. It's so good.
Holy shit, I honestly can't believe that's not an actual, like, full-on beer. That is surprisingly really
right?
good. Wow.
How cool is that, man? Randy fucking killed it. Randy, took the bull by the horns and went to Columbus. And, him and I, rewind about a year before that, him and I had met up with the Brew Dog peeps in Columbus and discussed this whole thing. And we're basically like, all right, let's greenlight this shit. And last fall, Randy went over there and kind of, orchestrated the whole thing and picked out the hops and all the beer things that go into beer, and made this super delicious. I'm just so stoked, and I'm so proud of Randy, and I love it. But I haven't touched alcohol for 6 years, so to have something that is like not in O'Doul's and delicious, I'm fucking pumped.
So a couple of things on that. I mean, you kind of hit a couple of the things I was going to ask, so I'll just kind of do more of a loose conversation, like two people having a conversation over beer. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and, we have founders. We have a fuckload of awesome breweries here in the States. And it's one of those things where, seeing what, the craft beer boom has kind of done over the last, I'll call it 5 or 6 years, really, has been really interesting. And, we're seeing a lot of bands, Deftones doing their series of beers. Everyone's kind of doing beers, even, Iron Maiden with their, the Trooper. And it's one of those things, at least for you guys, I didn't really know that you had ever gotten into craft beers. I thought you guys were more of like if I remember correctly, like the Miller Lite and Coors kind of guys. Were you really, before you stopped drinking, were you much into the craft beer thing, or was that not really your style?
No, not at all. Like, we were definitely the, cheap and easy American lager, Miller Lite, fucking the whole thing. I think out of all of us, Randy was a bit of a snob on that front.
Okay.
So, he was definitely more into the craft beer and all that jazz, but no, like before this and before I gave up drinking, it was strictly Miller Lite. So I really didn't know. So when Randy turned me on to Brew Dog's Nanny State, I almost spit it out because I was like, there's no way this isn't real beer. And, it was delicious. And so when this whole thing came about, I knew Randy was the right guy to go and make it happen. Because and shit, I wasn't wrong. The shit is delicious.
Out of curiosity, you kind of explained it a little bit, but explain a little bit more of like who reaches out to who to start this process. Is it a thing of like Randy and you were, having some of these beers and it was, we should do something like this and kind of bring out a non-alcoholic beer and kind of showcase a new avenue and potential for the craft beer scene? And then you just, happen to hit up somebody that worked at the brewery, or how does that what does that look like?
That's a really good question because, we had a day off in Columbus and it was right before, Rockville or Welcome? Whatever that...
Sonic Temple.
Yeah, Sonic Temple. That's what it was. So it was a few days before that, and we had a day off in Columbus, and I guess Randy... I don't know if they had reached out to him or he had reached out to them, but somehow organized this meeting down at their little headquarters, and, they were super interested because they had already had, the Nanny State and the Punk AF, so they were doing really quality NAs. And come to find out through this meeting, NA is really becoming a thing. Like, and,
yes.
In our trips to Europe and all that, I would see more and more billboards, particularly in heavy drinking countries. Like they were really trying to push NA. So it's like legitimately becoming a thing. So Randy I think Randy reached out. And they were really receptive to it. And we both went down there on that day off and ended up talking to like the brewmaster and a couple other peeps. And, they were equally as excited as we were. So it was really cool. And like you said before, a lot of bands are putting out all these beers and it was like, well, we don't want to be, another, obviously let's do a non-alcoholic, because nobody's doing that shit.
No. Well, that kind of made me wonder, were you guys a bit nervous to be literally the first band to do a beer that's a non-alcoholic beer and have that be the first of its kind to be released on a probably much more global scale than a lot of people are even aware of?
I think it's kind of par for the course with us. I think we do shit in, for lack of a better term, in a real gangster type way. That's like, fuck the trend. Let's do what we want to do, and put it out there, and let the beer kind of speak for itself. So yeah, I mean, there was no nerves really.
It's just kind of interesting because, like I posted yesterday, I happened to get one of our sponsors just put out a new coffee blend, and I was able to, get it yesterday, and it came with the beer that I got. Like a friend of mine, actually, it might be a mutual friend, I don't know if you know him off the top of your head, Rush, Beardcore, he usually hangs out with John.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so he happened to have a 6-pack that he bought, and I was like, yo, I'll do a beer trade with you and get that, because I'm talking to Willie tomorrow, and he goes, absolutely. And so it was one of those things, like, I was trying to figure out a way to get this, and then it just was like, oh, he happened to have it, so I was like, cool, I'm going to have it with him on over doing this. But the thing that was kind of interesting and thinking about it is, it's not 100% non-alcoholic, and it actually, as Rush and I were talking yesterday, I used to work at a strip club, and it was 18 and up, and we had O'Douls. And so I made the comment one day, because you always try to figure out ways to make better business decisions and drive sales and all that shit. And I was like, so can I try to sell this to 18-year-olds or minors technically? And they're like, no, because it's not 100% non-alcohol, or it's not 100%, alcohol free. There's just a little bit in there.
Right.
But not enough to be constituted as beer, but legally I don't think you can, which kind of made me start thinking about that in working, because this is obviously something that you guys all started working on over a year or so ago, as you've been saying, but it kind of made me wonder, were there any legal loopholes, because you're able to sell this through your website all over the US. Like I sent one to my co-host who doesn't know that and who will now, so Dan, you're getting a 6-pack of this. But it's one of those things where I was kind of surprised to see that you're just able to sell this online, no problems. Was there much of an issue with that, or was that not really handled by you guys at all?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. The first I've heard of this possibly being, a legality issue. So, no, that's on Brew Dog.
It's just, okay. It's just one of those things, like, I know how, in my traveling across the U.S., I, go into Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. It's like, they have their liquor and their beer separated in a same building, but separated by a wall. Like, you have to go to a completely different quote-unquote stores to get either one. You go to places like Vegas and New Orleans, and you can have open intox, and the hours, like, you go to Chicago, and you can drink until 4 a.m. Like, just the different laws that are in place in different states. And so that was kind of an interesting thing to think about logistically when doing this is, I'm surprised to see this, but like you've kind of had said, this is the first really of something of this caliber, and so it's kind of unprecedented and uncharted territory, kind of, I think, for the craft beer world to see how you get it out.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up really good points. I mean, I hadn't even thought about that, because you're right. It's like what, less than 0.5% or whatever it is. Which
yes.
in the beer world is negligible, but at the same time, it is alcohol. So, yeah, man, I don't know.
I kind of had wondered, I know you're a big coffee drinker and like really, really into your coffee. And so, yeah. I mean, obviously you said that, Randy kind of took the reins on this, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised because I'm pretty sure most of at least Randy and you are big coffee drinkers, that this wasn't a stout or maybe even a porter, like a coffee flavored or inspired beer of that variety, to kind of go that route, to kind of meld kind of two of your passions together.
Oh, coffee's coming, bro. Don't even sweat it. Yeah. No, we'd been thinking about it, and we were like, well, let's because neither of us, I think, really drink porter or stout or anything like that. So we wanted to keep the beer to a beer that we would enjoy, like an IPA or something like that. So yes, and to come full circle, coffee is coming. I'm not sure how much I can say about it, but is we wanted to keep it separate and do the coffee thing right.
Do you envision, I mean, you just kind of said that, you guys aren't, you're more kind of the IPA and, lager style things. Do you see yourself kind of maybe with the success of this doing seemingly pretty well, of maybe kind of doing something like Deftones has done, where they're kind of doing seasonal releases and so forth?
I don't know. I hadn't even thought about it. I guess, well, I would not mind entertaining that conversation whatsoever. I think that would be really, really cool. And, for all the NA drinkers out there, I think peeps would appreciate it. And, it's funny, like I was saying, NA is becoming like a real thing. Like, my wife and I went to Total Wine and Liquor, which is like a huge, exactly what it sounds like, a huge fucking warehouse of booze. But they also have now, like, the NA section is like 3 times the size of what it was the last time I had been in there, with Brooklyn Brewery having NAs. It's just becoming a thing. So I would love to kind of elaborate on it and do like seasonal NAs. I mean, that would, that's pretty goddamn cool.
It's just one of those things. I feel like, there's, like I said, the craft beer boom has kind of been crazy, and even I'll elaborate and kind of go more into craft cocktails, and you're seeing tobacco, like pipe smoking tobacco, kind of coming back into fashion, and the kind of craft element of that, of getting different tobacco blends, and just everything kind of seemingly is more about creating a unique situation and an environment for whatever the experience that you're looking to partake in. And I think it's just kind of really interesting, and it's fun to see even, non-alcoholic beer kind of following that trend and getting interesting. Like, I keep sipping this beer, and, I keep constantly going, there's no way there's not fucking, like, this isn't just a full-on beer. Like, it tastes like a beer.
I know, dude. I know. It's really cool. It just kind of, it makes my heart swell. It makes my non-drunk heart swell.
Are you guys planning on doing, because I know that obviously the thing was going to be taking this out on the road with you guys. Was there plans to bring kegs with you at some of these shows and have it on draft so people can kind of get a taste of it that way as well? Or even maybe tap takeovers a la kind of like an in-store signing type thing? Was there plans to do any of that before all of this happened?
Not until now. Shit, that sounds awesome.
I need a free case then for the idea.
Yeah, right? I think we were going to have like cases delivered, but, being able to, I think the first time I tried an NA out of a keg, like on tap, was in Spain, and it was fucking delicious. So I would love to do that, because there is something about a draft beer that, it's just a little more cold. It's a little crisper. It's a little better. So yeah, I'd be way into that, dude.
Well, I'll be awaiting my free 6-pack for the idea when you guys officially do that.
You'll get your royalty checks. Just
awesome.
Hold your breath.
This is kind of a weird question. Something I kind of thought of in light of you and Randy, and now Mark even in the last year, and a lot of band people actually you're seeing kind of go to being sober after probably just years and years of partying because it's so readily available at all times,
right.
And it does kind of make me wonder. I did see some people, when I posted the beer, they're like, I just don't understand the idea of a non-alcoholic beer. Like, what's the point? And all that kind of stuff. And I did see some people online comment, people who are like, I'm sober, like I've never, straight edge basically, but I'd be interested in trying this. Do you think you're going to get some people who have never drank to maybe try a beer because of it being a non-alcoholic beer, and maybe they like the band? Have you thought about that at all?
I haven't thought about that, because, usually beer drinkers, and especially like NA beer, is for dudes in recovery or dudes that have had drinking problems. So to think about, like guys that have never drank just because they just never did it, never saw the appeal, whatever. I don't know. It's delicious, so I can't see why not. But if they never, if they don't like beer, then they're not going to like this beer because it tastes like beer.
It's true.
So I really don't. I'd love to think that, if they're just avoiding alcohol to avoid alcohol, I get that. So, yeah, I mean, give it a shot. But I don't know, man.
Well, I don't want to keep you much longer. I think you got another one right behind me. So where can everyone find you guys, the band, and where can people pick this up?
So, they can find us at, they can find the beer. I think we sell it on our website, lambofgod.com. And I'm pretty fucking positive that you can get it through Brew Dog's website, whatever that is.
I think it's just brewdog.com.
Brewdog.com. And, yeah, I mean, look out for our new record. You know, it got pushed back a little bit, but I think everything is getting pushed back a little bit, so it's not that surprising.
Yeah, it's not, but you know what? You guys released a new song as of yesterday, as of when we're recording. So, I mean, it kind of makes up for it a little bit.
Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe when the record gets a little closer to actually dropping and we get to hear all of it, love to have you or somebody come back on and maybe talk a little bit about it, maybe over some Ghostwalker if you happen to replenish your stock.
I'd love to, man. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, Willie, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. You do the same.
What's up, everyone? John here, and I've got to tell you guys all about this band, Martyr from Madison. Hailing from right here in my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan, check out their latest single, A Better Place, off their upcoming EP, Nearsighted, which will be available everywhere May 8th. Pre-orders are live right now over at distrokid.com or pre-save on your preferred streaming service. This is A Better Place by Martyr from Madison off their Nearsighted EP coming at you May 8th, so pre-order it today. So that was my conversation with Willie Adler of Lamb of God. I had fun. I mean, it's just kind of refreshing sometimes when someone's just so bubbly and warm, like, over the phone that it just kind of seeps into the conversation.
Yeah.
I know a little bit of that. Maybe would have been different than what you would have expected, talking about a non-alcoholic beer. But I do think you kind of can get a sense that just like their band, just like their music and so forth, anything they do, they're very passionate about. And I think that definitely comes across in this quick little chat we did with Willie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just funny the amount of ideas you gave them too. I mean, you pretty much laid out their plan, you know, for them.
Well, I mean, I'm trying really hard to get those 3 cases of beer, man.
There you go.
So I teased right before we went into the interview a fun, interesting story about Willie. I know he mentions in the interview that, you know, he's been sober now, I think, 6 years. And a long time ago on an Ozfest, so you already know where this story is going to potentially go.
Right.
I went to Ozfest to go see my friend, and that was on the tour, and, you know, hanging out backstage, Ozzy's playing, all the bands are barbecuing, drinking, having a good time, and Willie is kind of 3 sheets to the wind. And my friend had been telling some people on the tour about this stupid tattoo I have, purposely stupid, and Willie was like, "You think you have a stupid tattoo? Have you seen my tattoo?" And I was like, yeah, the 3-piece Willie. Yep. I've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, because it's on their documentary.
Right.
And he was like, oh. And I couldn't tell if he was, like, upset that I knew about it or whatever, but he just kind of kept picking at me about him having a more stupid tattoo than I did.
Okay.
And, you know, it's one of those stories I think it's funny to tell now just because it's like, you know, Willie is a super nice dude. I've met him a couple other times through mutual friends and so forth, and he's always been super nice, and how you've heard him on the interview is how he usually is. So super warm and friendly and all that kind of stuff. This is a very one-off occurrence, but it's always stuck with me because I was like, I'm about to get into, I mean, I'm not going to, but like a fight is almost about to break out over who has a more stupid tattoo. Willie with his 3-piece Willie tattoo on his stomach, or me with my drink till you're gay tattoo on my leg. And it was just like, is this really happening right now?
That's really funny.
Yeah, so I've always kind of had that. So, I mean, I think that's, you know, plenty of stories like that are why a lot of people, you know, end up going the sober route. Because, like I said in the interview, and I've said it previously, you know, a lot of people, when you're touring, you get wherever you go, you get loaded down with a bunch of free booze or free alcohol. If you sell out a venue, you get a lot of, like, top shelf liquors and so forth. There's just a lot of hours in the day to just drink away. When you have nothing else to do in the middle of sometimes nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And I'm gonna be pretty excited to get my case, and hopefully it doesn't just sit outside all day and get super hot. But
You haven't had those random bouts of snowstorms like we have?
no, I mean, I'm in the middle of a pretty intense thunderstorm right now, but that's about it. Just clinging to my space dust as best I can.
Well, Dan's drinking a space dust. I am having a Lantern Lighter pumpkin milkshake triple IPA. It's made by the people over at Abomination Brewing. It's triple IPA brewed with lactose, vanilla beans, and pumpkin, and then double dry hopped with citric and mosaic hops. So it's definitely out of season. I grabbed this thinking, oh, that sounds great. And then as I was looking at the can a little bit more to take a photo of it, I realized that I had already posted me buying this beer previously when it was more in season.
That's really funny.
Gimmick's so good it got me twice.
There you go. Shame on you. It got you twice.
Yeah, beer's actually better than I remember it being. So I'd like to try some more of their stuff because they definitely have kind of like a metal kind of horror looking thing about their cans and releases. So definitely pretty cool. Going to wrap this up because obviously at this point we've been talking longer than the interview, and that's always kind of...
It's a bite-sized interview. It's fun.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get Willie back on, like we said at the end, when the record actually gets ready to come out, and have a couple of those Ghost Walkers and talk about this new record. So far, the first 4 singles or so that are off of it are pretty killer. I know I'm actually looking forward to hearing the rest of it and hearing how everything kind of flows, because I think that's kind of half of the fun of a Lamb of God record, is just kind of seeing how like some of those deeper songs kind of vibe with the rest of the record. I mean, they've got some really killer, epic closing tracks on some of the last few records they put out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they're I can't wait.
Yeah, so if you would like to keep up with Lamb of God, you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lamb of God. If you would like to keep up with Willie Adler, you can find him simply enough on Instagram at Willie Adler. Hasn't used it in about a year, so don't think you're going to be catching up too much on recent things, but it's good to go back through and check out what he's up to. Maybe he'll start posting again. If you would like to follow the brewery, go to Brew Dog Official on Instagram and at Brew Dog on Twitter. If you would like to pick up some Ghost Walker, since it's non-alcoholic, you can pick it up at lambofgodbeer.com. You can go over to shopusa.brewdog.com. We're going to leave a link to where you can actually go straight to the link in their website. It's a long-ass website name, so it's just easier to do that. Or you can go over to lamb-of-god.com. They also have packages over there for the beer. I think this is a cool idea. I think you should support it. A lot of bands are doing this, and unfortunately, when a lot of bands do this, you can't fucking buy the beer unless you either A, live in that area, or B, know someone who lives in the area to ship it to you, which is technically illegal. So this is kind of interesting. This breaks a lot of new ground of being able to buy a beer. Like Dan said, I bought him a case. It'll be at his house, and no one's ID had to be checked. That was pretty cool, in my opinion.
Even though there were traces of alcohol in it.
Yes, which is also interesting and kind of an interesting concept, which maybe we'll talk about at another time, how we feel about sober people drinking something that technically does have alcohol in it.
Right. It's barely any.
Yeah, exactly. And Dan will tell you where he can be found on the internet, probably drinking beer somewhere.
Usually somewhere. It used to be back alleys, but now I have to do it at home, so, here we are. But you can find me on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan, on Facebook under Daniel Terry. You can send me an email at discussmetaldan@gmail.com, or you can check out my other podcasts at discussmetal.com.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, it's simple enough. Brew Speak Pod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Speaking of Instagram, we've been doing a few Instagram live things with some past guests on this podcast. Last Friday, as of when we're recording, we did one with Mark Volalunga of Nothing More. That was really rad, getting to talk to him about just shooting the shit about beer. A lot of the fans came out from all over the world. That was really cool to see people commenting from Italy, from, I think, Prague, from Argentina, and just kind of seeing a collective of the Nothing More family checking in with each other in the comment section. It's not much, to do an Instagram live thing, but it's really cool to kind of see fans of these bands coming through, commenting in the comment section and so forth, and just kind of giving a distraction for what we're currently going through. So it's been a lot of fun. Did one with Kent Susi of Unearth today as of when we're recording. Both of these are up over on our YouTube channel as well if you didn't catch it on the first run. Going to be doing one with Patrick Galante of Ice Nine Kills, and ending out this week with Chad Nicefield formerly of Wilson. And yeah, these are a lot of fun. I hopefully can continue more of these and maybe try to do some where Dan hops on and is involved with them or whatever. It's an interesting feature that I don't think we've really utilized in the past, so looking forward to doing more of that. So Follow us across the socials. And speaking of supporting us, we want to thank our sponsors for supporting our show in these tough times as well. Shout out to the Bean Bastard. Got that Sproton pack, their new blend that they just came out with. Super delicious. You really kind of taste that cherry and the chocolate and all that kind of stuff in there. Again, if you're a fan of like Ghostbusters or 80s theme things, this is a coffee brand right up your alley. Support them for supporting us. Go to beanbastard.com, get some coffee, support a local business, local to New York, but still a local small business, as it were. Facebook, Instagram, at The Bean Bastard. Thanks also to On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point, neither of which I have currently going on. What little bit of facial hair I can grow looks like shit, and my hair is growing out of control. And I think at this point, On Point Pomade and beard oil can't save me, but it can save Dan, and it can save most of you, because you guys have nice beards, and you have nicer hair than me.
Well, I used to have a nice beard. I mean, I shaved it relatively recently, but I don't know. It's starting to come back. But yeah, the hair's not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's hair's going anywhere for a little bit.
Nope.
And lastly, but not leastly, Rockabilia.com. We want to thank those guys for supporting us. They came on recently, and we couldn't think of a better sponsor for this show that incorporates so many of the things that we love between rock, metal, hardcore, movies, pop culture things. Anything that you would be into, you can find over there at Rockabilia.com. They have over 500,000 items for sale. Currently looking at Rockabilia's website right now. A lot of cool Lamb of God merch. There's one in particular I really like. It's, being into hardcore like I am, the classic hardcore shirts, a live action band shot with the crowd. They have one of those for Lamb of God, and it just says Richmond over it, so obviously the band being from Richmond, Virginia. A lot of cool stuff: wall flags, hats, beanies, hoodies. Even have a Pure American Metal t-shirt from the New American Gospel album cover. Just a lot of really cool shit. Even a belt and a candle. They have a Lamb of God candle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I wonder what it smells like.
Smells like death. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But Rockabilia has everything you could possibly want. You don't have to worry about the quality of the things you're getting, because unlike going to eBay where you're getting bootleg-ass shirts, currently like the one I'm wearing, you don't have to worry about them falling apart after one wash or the print wearing off. You know it's good. They're officially licensed through the band, so you're also supporting the bands directly when you go to Rockabilia.com. So head on over there, and if you're a first-time user, you'll see an ad pop up. You get 10% off your first purchase. So if you're able to support Rockabilia.com and get some fresh swag, now would be the time to do it. Support them, and support all of our sponsors for supporting us. And for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
And we will talk to you next time.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. Okay. I mean, I knew it was going to fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were going to get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you. Don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.